could have asked a load of people to do this, but they asked me because I'm the pretty one. Did any of you know that there is a small department within the United Nations offices in Brussels, whose job it is to try and engage with the ordinary members of the public and to explain to them what the UN does and why it's important. Well, there is, and one of their initiatives is a thing called Cine-UN, and they organize movie screenings all over Europe, and then it'll be a screening of a movie that somehow connects with the work that the UN does. And then after the movie, they'll have like a panel discussion or something about the issues that have been raised. But as you might imagine, most of the films that do connect with the work that the UN do are sort of a hard sell. After a long Wednesday in the office in Oslo, or another boring university lecture in Vienna, or a hard day making goulash in Budapest, do you really want to go and see a grim, depressing movie, a documentary about the Syrian refugee crisis, or a panel discussion about the issues raised in a non-narrative film about food security? Well, you probably don't. And that explains why the little group of people in the Cine-UN office are very accustomed to half-empty screening rooms, and also why they might think that an uplifting, positive, feel-good Irish documentary with a happy ending and a giant shiny drag queen that they can put on the poster might be the greatest film ever made. And that also explains why I have spent a lot of the last year being dragged around Europe, taking part in panel discussions to mark the 70th anniversary of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, if you're like me, you've probably never actually read it, until you realize you better bloody well read it, because any moment now there might be a load of Europeans in stylish glasses asking you questions about it. But you should read it, because it's an important and also it's an interesting document. And it's interesting for what is included, but also for what's not included. Now, luckily for the distressed members of the Cine-UN team, gender and sexuality is included in it, and that you might have easily guessed. But would you have as easily guessed that also included is the right to freely participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts and its benefits. To freely participate in the cultural life of your community and to enjoy the arts and its benefits. See, at first glance, that idea seems so sort of simple or so obvious, so self-evident really, so uncomplicated that you might wonder why you even bothered to put it in. Or at least it does if you look and sound like most of us here in this room. And that's the problem. Because if you look and sound like most of us here in this room, enjoying the arts and its benefits is easy and simple. It's as easy and as simple as Boris Johnson promised Brexit would be. In fact, it's easier because we don't have to take back control of the arts. We already have control of the arts. But what if you don't look and sound like most of us here in this room? Can you as freely participate in the cultural life of the community as an artist, for example, if, for example, you use a wheelchair? Well, spoiler alert, no, you bloody well can't. And can you freely participate in the cultural life of the community if you are in direct provision, or a member of the traveling community, or even elderly? Well, no, and no. And as we've been forced to acknowledge over the last couple of years by movements that Orla mentioned, like Making the Feminist and Fair Play, the answer is also no if you're a woman. So, the policy being launched tonight is, I think, a bold sort of statement of intent to put changing these policies at the absolute heart of everything that the Arts Council does, and one that should be applauded. But as the cover says, if you already have a copy of it, it's not just a policy, it's also a strategy. Because, of course, that's important, because, policy isn't worth the glossy paper it's written on if you don't have a strategy to implement it. And so I hope that this document will become the foundational document on which real change is built. And if it doesn't, well, it certainly will be a tangible rod for the Arts Council's back. And because with this document, the Arts Council is sort of setting down a marker, and it is a marker which I think they know can be used in the future to measure their success or failure at what they set out to achieve, which is pretty brave of you. But I think it's also something else too. It's more than just policy or strategy. What it is a challenge. It's a challenge to the gatekeepers of the arts. The people who look and sound mostly like most of us here in this room, the people who have the power to make the necessary changes, the people who get to make the funding decisions, the curatorial decisions, the management decisions, and that ultimately decide who gets seen and heard and who gets to see and hear. It's a challenge really to examine their own inherent biases and ask yourselves, are you hindering or helping? It's a challenge to look at the audiences that come through your doors, to look at the artists that you encourage or work with or fund, and ask yourself, do they look like Ireland? Do they look like the messy, diverse Ireland I see every day around me? Or do they all look like they're related? Are they all from one section or one particular strata of Ireland? Do your actions speak as loudly as the words in this aspirational document? And I don't want to make that sound like a chore, because it shouldn't be a chore, because making sure that the arts are diverse and diverse and sort of interesting, it isn't a chore. It's not an onerous task. It's a happy one, because diverse art sector is also more vibrant, stronger, healthier, and more exciting one. Now, this document, as you would expect, focuses often on the 8 categories that are listed under discrimination legislation, and as Orla mentioned, they are, to sort of quickly remind you, gender, sexual orientation, civil or family status, religion, age, disability, race, or membership of the traveller community. However, I was also especially glad to see that they also explicitly recognize another barrier to freely participating in the artistic life of your community, and that's a more invisible barrier, and that is socio-economic background. Now, as is plainly obvious, I am painfully middle class, so I have never felt excluded from the arts. Not from my background, anyway. I fit in. I have the right accent, the right education, I'm not intimidated by the language or the currency or the buildings. And no one will look at me with suspicion in a gallery, or my accent, it won't stick out in the concert hall, and I see people who are just like me in the seats beside me and on the stages in front of me. The arts are a very comfortable space for someone like me, and while it's easily apparent, even to me, that the arts might not be such a welcoming space if you are, for example, someone with a disability or from a different ethnic background, what is maybe less visible or less obvious, and certainly less acknowledged, is the invisible barriers that can prevent people from less advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds from being able to, or feeling able to, or feeling encouraged to participate in the arts. And one of those barriers is actually one that I should recognize, because it's not seeing yourself reflected in the arts. Because seeing people like yourself and people like you reflected back at you from stages or gallery walls is absolutely vital. And that's something that I started to learn about from an unlikely source, maybe, something that Martina Navratilova told me. Because it was 1978 when I first met her, Martina and I, and she was introduced to me by television. Because 1978 was the first time that Martina Navratilova won her first Wimbledon championship, and she beat my then favourite Chris Everett in 3 sets. And after that summer of 1978, I didn't know anything about her, but I now knew that Martina Navratilova existed, and she was good enough to beat my favourite, Chris Everett. Now, I should probably explain some younger people here. I wasn't a particularly huge tennis fan or anything. I mean, I liked tennis and I played tennis in Ballinrobe, County Mayo, just out the road here. But the thing is, in 1978 in Ballinrobe, County Mayo, we had one television channel, RTE. It wasn't even called RT1 because there wasn't a 2 to differentiate until the following year. And there was nothing else. It was just you, a rock, and RTE. And almost anything that RTE showed, we all watched. And when I say we all, I mean we all, everybody watched. The nuns watched it, the outlads in the pub watched it, your neighbours watched it, your dad watched it, your ma watched it, you watched it. And Marty didn't even bother at the time with mornings or afternoons. He didn't want to distract us from the prayers and typhoid. But once a year during the hot summer, the television would be on in the afternoon. And we would see these beautiful tanned foreigners playing tennis on perfectly green grass. And everyone was watching. And in 1978, all of us were able to pronounce and spell exotic names like Yvonne Hooligan or Bjorn Borg. And by the time 1979 came around, we could also all spell Martina Navratilova. Because 1979 came around quickly, and by then all your backstory goes. I knew other things too, because 1979 was the first time that I ever heard rumors about these strange creatures called queers, who were fellas, but apparently liked other fellas. And it was also the year that I started to get funny feelings watching Michael Murphy read the news. And it was the first year that I started to worry, about something. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at the time yet, but I knew there was something worrying. And into that maelstrom of worry strode Martina Navratilova in 1979 back to defend her title. Now, by now, we'd all spelled her name and we all knew everything about her. She had come from behind the Iron Curtain, the commies. She was a tennis genius, and she was brave because after losing the semi-final of the US Open, she had walked into an office in Manhattan, an immigration office, and told them that she wanted to defect to the West. And she was totally alone. And everyone and everything that she knew was on the other side of the terrifying Iron Curtain, and she had nothing to her name except her talent and her racket. And her strong, muscular physique, her big, kind of manly arms, and her square jaw. Oh. And then, Martina Navratilova just said it. She just admitted it. She was a leather. And as far as anyone in Ballinrobe, County Mayo, at the National School of Christian Brothers, she was the first person ever in the history of the whole world, while still alive, to admit to being a leather. And we were shocked. Everyone was shocked. I say even those nice fellas who that year were on the radio and TV all the time extolling the virtues of the YMCA, those nice regular fellas who like to dress up, I say even they were a bit shocked about it. But the thing was, Martina wasn't even apologizing for it. She didn't apologize. It was like she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And the weird thing is, because she didn't act ashamed, and because she was the best tennis player in the world, well, people didn't really say that many mean things about her. Well, she wasn't ashamed of it, so what were they going to say? I mean, pointing out this thing that she had already pointed out seemed a bit pointless. And because she was the greatest tennis player in the world, that made it harder to touch her too. I mean, what were they going to say? You're a dyke. Yes, I am a lesbian. I'm also the greatest women's tennis player the world has ever seen. I'm brave. I escaped the commies, and now I'm rich and famous. And you're driving a Cortina in Claremont County. And some small part of me recognized something in Martina. Something in her that reflected some part of me back at me. Now, I didn't know enough at the time to sort of firmly identify it, but I was beginning to put some kind of shape on it. And I was only able to do that because for the first time I saw someone, only on the telly, only in picture, but I still saw them, and they showed me a small part of myself by reflecting it back at me. And for me, that was really momentous. Now, Martina Navratilova did not make me queer. I am pretty sure the Wanderly Wagon did that. But what she did do was, she was the first person to help me understand this part of me, and the first one to help me starting to feel that it might not be the end of the world if it was a part of me. And I've loved and admired her ever since. We're actually kind of Twitter friends now. She said some nice things about me, and we have had some interactions ever since, and every time we do, I want to run out and find 10-year-old me and grab him and say, "You will not believe what Martina happened." Now, after Martina, that was the first glint of light reflected back at me. I started to find other scraps of light reflected back at me, but it was piece by piece, a very slow process, because at the time, those scraps of light were still very few and very far between. And we all have things in our past that we're not proud of. Things that, your mother never mentions, and certainly not in company, and tries to gloss over when relatives ask, but I, following Martina's lead, refuse to be ashamed of my art student past. I've nothing to be ashamed of. And during those student years, I spent a lot of time in the National Gallery on Merrion Square in Dublin. A lot of time gazing at, and occasionally sketching, but mostly just gazing at these big pictures that hung silently on those walls, waiting to be looked at. And, that's pictures very raison d'etre, to be looked at. Whenever somebody trots out that old thing, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, I always want to say, don't be so stupid, of course it makes a sound. Sound waves don't care if we're there or not to hear it. And also don't be so full of yourself, because there are forest animals, and they have ears too. But if no one is looking at a picture, is it still a picture? See, that's not a stupid question. It's actually a very good question, I'm glad you asked me, because I would argue that no, it's not. Unfortunately for one of the National Gallery's most famous neighbours and one of his most famous novels, a picture hidden away unseen in an attic isn't a picture. It's just a meaningless smear of texture and tone. It's a random mash of hazy spectrum points that has shape but no meaning. And for me, when we look at pictures, and the science of it is that our brains take in this tangle of color and light and texture and shape, from thousands and millions and billions of photons hidden in our retinas, and we put it all back together using the clues that the artist left for us, and we make a picture sort of magically in our heads from the chaos of all of those billions of photons. And it's a magical thing, because pictures need us. They need us to look at them, because without us looking at them, well, they're actually nothing. They need us to be pictures. But to quote Dolly Rebecca Parton, peace be upon her, it's not all taken and no given. Because we need to be seen too. We need to see ourselves reflected back at ourselves to know who we are. We need to see who we can be to know who we want to be. We need to see what we could be in order to know what we aspire to be or what we would dread to be. And for centuries, for millennia, we have used pictures and the arts to see ourselves, to see what we are and what we were and what we can be. And one day, we're standing, gazing at pictures in our bad, cheap, home-dyed art student haircut, blunt, asymmetric cut, magically cobbling these photons together, and we're looking for something intangible, some meaning or a feeling, an idea, maybe some spark of inspiration. And then every now and then, it's the right day, it's the right time of day, it's the right it's the right picture, it's the right light, and suddenly what you're seeing looking back at you is you, or at least some part of you, or someone like you, or some experience that resonates with you, and you feel seen, maybe seen and understood by someone who painted that picture hundreds of years ago. That's even more amazing, because when you are the weird art student kid, and you're in grey, aggressively normal, and aggressively grey Dublin of 1987, and you've taken the 46A into town to go to the gallery, and the journey was stressful, but also just so boringly familiar, because an interchangeable group of excitable teenagers thought they were hilarious to point out, and the first ones to point out that you look like a faggoty clown. And in fairness to them. But when you are that kid, it is incredibly powerful, and it feels so good to then see another faggoty-looking clown looking back at you from the august walls of the National Gallery in Merrion Square. And it doesn't matter even if he's only a bit player in the picture, in the crowd cheering on the horses, or hanging off a railing listening to the famous orator's speech, or a passerby in a marketplace, or a drunk playing cards, or an apostle crowding around a really ripped Jesus, or even Jesus himself. it just feels good to know that there have always been faggoty-looking clowns. You know, and some of them even got to be Jesus. And it feels good because it is literally life-affirming. And in my, at the time, desperately needed case, literally queer life-affirming. And it feels good because it gives you a sense of being rooted in the world. You know, it turns out that you're not some ephemeral glitch or, you know, biological hiccup or some cock-up that nature made because they were distracted by something on the television about sorting chromosomes. No, you know, we were meant to be here. You were meant to be here. There have always been people like you here. And there's proof. It's right there on the gallery wall staring back at you, you know, in the corner behind King What's-His-Face III. You're entertaining the other drunks by doing a dance of the 7 days of a half-eaten chicken drumstick. And pictures and other artworks can become like friends to you over time. I think especially in a gallery, it's my own favorite one. And I've been friends with some of the pictures on the walls in Marion Square for over 30 years. Since we first got to know each other when I was an awkward student. And I would recommend it, making friends with pictures. They make good, constant, comforting, enlightening companions. You do have to pop in and see them every now and then, like, you know, elderly housebound neighbors or something. But they're worth it. And sometimes you might be just killing some time, you know, a few minutes before a meeting, or you're, you know, hoping that the rain shower will pass, and you just whiz around to see a couple of your favorites. Sometimes maybe you might be showing a visiting friend around, introducing them to some of your old mates, or maybe you just feel like seeing the old gang and you set aside some real time to have the deep and meaningfuls, spend some time hanging out, get reacquainted with each other. I'm sorry, I've just been really busy. I see you still have leprosy. Oh, hey, you two. Still going out together, still blocking the turret stairs, I see. And as you get older, sometimes we might grow apart. Nothing major, your lives just went in different directions maybe. They got married and settled down in an old master, and you've been spending a lot of time with Strongbow and Eva recently because they had a party. Last time you went there with a half-naked orgy at their wedding. And sometimes you'll pop in and see them, one of your quirkier friends, your less popular friends, have just disappeared without a word of goodbye. And then other times you'll pop in and some new friend has moved in, someone you connect with immediately, you feel like you've known forever. He's hot, he's on a horse, and he has a big cloak, but he can pull it off. And sometimes, especially, you might be in to see some visiting swanky show-busy types that are just passing through. But while you're in there, you pass, you know, who's around again and see some of your favorites on the way out. And maybe, one time, you're with your elderly father, who's up in Dublin for the day with your mum, and she and your elderly ma are off buying cardigans or something. Can't remember exactly what. And it's the kind of thing anyway that Dad would hate, and Ma would get annoyed because he'd be hanging around hating it and getting in the way. And Dad knows that she would hate him hanging around hating it because they've been together for over 60 years. So Dad and I go to the gallery while they're in the Kilkenny shop or whatever to see this exhibition, Caravaggio exhibition that he read about in the paper. And we stand silently among the big crowds who also come to see this famous artist's work and the work of his friends. And we stand quietly, me and my father, in front of one lovingly painted man after another. Each one bathed in the famous light of Caravaggio. The famous light reflecting off this sensual piece of skin that's always seems to be revealed by the clothes that always seem to be slipping off the models. You know, whether they are protecting the very toned Jesus and soldiers, or whether they are just quietly peeling a moist fruit. And we find ourselves standing in front of a rather camp teenager, a boy who is reacting theatrically to being nipped on the finger by a small gecko lizard. And I'm thinking, God, girl. I even recognize the big mop of curly hair just like I had when I was his age. Can you imagine, Dale, my sister, the drama if I'd been bitten on the finger by a gecko on holidays in France that time? It would have been really gay. And suddenly, my dad, who's been quiet for the last 20 minutes, has turned down his hearing aid, so he doesn't realize how loudly he's speaking, suddenly announces, "Definitely queer, that Caravaggio." He'd be drinking in your place, all right. And he wasn't wrong. He would have been. And both I and my dad had recognized something in Caravaggio that reflected something on the younger of the two O'Neills. Thank you.